Today, we are diving into one of the greatest stories ever told. It's a tale packed with heroes, meddling gods, and a city burned to the ground, all supposedly for the love of one woman. We're talking, of course, about the Trojan War. But here's the question that has bugged historians and archaeologists for centuries. Behind all the epic poetry and myth, was the Trojan War a real thing? Did it actually happen? To figure that out, we've got to meet the cast of characters. The story is just full of these legendary names you'll recognize. First up, you've got Achilles, the greatest warrior of his time, basically invincible, but, ultimately brought down by his own pride and rage. And on the other side, there's Hector. He's the noble prince, the protector of Troy, fighting for his home, his family, against some pretty impossible odds. And of course, there's Helen, the face that launched 1,000 ships, right? The story goes that her abduction by the Trojan prince Paris is what kicked this whole massive war off. And finally, the most famous trick in all of military history, the Trojan horse. It's become such a powerful symbol of deception that it's a legend all on its own. Okay, so to figure out what might be real, we first have to get a handle on the legend itself. So let's start with part 1, the epic story. So the classic story is all about betrayal and revenge. You've got Prince Paris of Troy, who steals Helen, the wife of a Greek king. In response, you get this huge team-up of Greek kings, the Achaeans, who all sail together to get her back. What follows is a brutal 10-year-long war that only ends when the Greeks pull off one final desperate trick. They leave behind a giant wooden horse. But where does this incredible story even come from? Well, it's not from a single history book. It's part of what we call an epic tradition. Basically, a whole collection of poems and tales that were passed down for centuries. And get this, even Homer's famous Iliad only covers a few weeks in the final year of the war. The Trojan horse, it's not even in there. That detail actually comes from other later stories. For hundreds and hundreds of years, that's all it was, a story. But then, the whole search moved from the pages of old poems and into the dirt of the real world. And this, right here, is the first massive breakthrough. Troy was not a fantasy land. Archaeologists have proven, without a doubt, that the legendary city of Troy actually existed. They found it at a place called Hisarlik in modern-day Turkey, and its location makes total sense. It was in this perfect strategic spot to control shipping and trade routes. I mean, it was a prime piece of real estate for a rich and powerful Bronze Age city, just like the one in the legends. The trick is, the site was lived in for so long that it was built and rebuilt over and over, creating all these different layers. But, finding the city just led to a brand new mystery. See, archaeologists didn't just find one city. They found at least 9 cities, all built right on top of each other. So the big question became, which one of these was Homer's Troy? Okay, so the investigation has really narrowed it down to 2 main suspects. On one hand, you have Troy v6. This was a big, grand city with massive walls, totally matching the description in the epic. But the evidence suggests it was probably destroyed by a huge earthquake, not a war. On the other hand, built right on top of those ruins is Troy v7a. It seems poorer, more cramped, and, this is the key, it has clear signs that it was destroyed in a violent war. So we have a real place, and we have evidence of a potential war. Now for the hard part, separating the plausible historical facts from centuries of poetic storytelling. First off, who were the attackers? The poems call them the Achaeans. Historians are pretty sure this is a memory of the Mycenaeans. They were the dominant, super warlike civilization back in Greece during the late Bronze Age. As a major power in the region, them getting into a conflict with a big rival like Troy, yeah, that's completely plausible. This also explains how a real historical event could get blown up into an epic legend. It survived through what's called oral tradition. Think of it like a game of telephone that lasts for hundreds of years. Storytellers passed the tale down, and with every telling, the heroes got bigger, the battles got more dramatic, and that line between fact and fiction got really, really blurry. So let's break it down side by side. On the left, you've got what seems historically plausible. There was a real city of Troy. A major conflict back then is definitely possible, and the Mycenaean Greeks were a real regional power. Then, on the right, you have the epic tradition, the kidnapping of Helen, a war that lasts exactly 10 years, the one-on-one duels between Achilles and Hector, and of course, the wooden horse. That stuff almost certainly belongs to the world of poetry. And speaking of that horse, let's be crystal clear about this. There is absolutely zero archaeological evidence that a giant wooden horse was ever used to capture the city. It's the most famous part of the story, but it's the one with the shakiest historical legs. So if it wasn't a real horse, what could it have been? Well, scholars have a few theories. Maybe it was a distorted memory of a wooden siege engine, like a battering ram that broke through the walls. Or maybe it was a metaphor for something else. But honestly, the most likely explanation is that it was just a brilliant piece of storytelling, a dramatic way to finally end a decade-long stalemate. So, if so many of the details are likely fiction, why does the story still have such a powerful grip on us, thousands of years later? Why do we keep telling it? Well, for the ancient Greeks, this was way more than just a story. It was their shared history, their origin story. It gave them a heroic past that united them. It provided role models for things like bravery and honor, and it explored deep, timeless questions about glory and the devastating human cost of war, questions we're all still asking today. And ultimately, the whole search for the real Trojan War tells us something even more profound. It's not just a question about what happened. It's a story about how we as human beings remember war, how we turn tragedy into legend, and why we feel this need to keep telling these stories, generation after generation. Which really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. That line between history and myth is always being drawn and redrawn. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What stories are we telling today that will become the epic legends of tomorrow?